And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network. This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. Welcome to Nicholas Hood III Ministries, a ministry of hope, spiritual inspiration, personal power guided by Christian love. May the power of God's Holy Spirit fall upon you as you sit back and enjoy today's program. I introduce you now to Pastor Nicholas Hood III.
Today I want to talk about Vashti, an example from the Bible of an independent, liberated, strong-willed woman. I don't know who's looking at this today, but if you've ever looked for validation of strong, independent, liberated women, we find it in the book of Esther, the first chapter. There's a story about a woman named Vashti. And it's interesting. The book of Esther is named Esther, who's really the second queen, but the first queen is a woman named Vashti. And I want to just paint this little story for you, what happens. Vashti is married to the king of Persia. We don't know if Vashti is Persian or not, but we're told that the king of Persia had a geography of Persia that extended all the way from India to Ethiopia. Now, Persia is modern-day Iran. And think about what I'm saying. When you read in the news, you hear in the news about all the conflict between the United States and Iran. The reality is that the Iranian people are strong-willed people. They are people who, they have a strong sense of history. In their history, they remember when the Persian Empire was the greatest empire under the sun. And even in Israel, it's kind of ironic that in modern-day Israel, Iran is considered one of the greatest adversaries that they have. But actually, when I visited the Knesset, which is the parliament of Israel in 2006, I was interested to see that the name of Cyrus of Persia is on the wall there in the Knesset. And you may say, well, why is that? Well, Cyrus is considered the liberator of the Jews. When the Jewish people were under Babylonian exile, it was Cyrus who liberated them and made it possible for them to go home to Israel. So it's a very complicated history. But in the book of Esther, what happens is that the king of Persia, in his third year, a man named, if I have his pronunciation right, Ahasuerus, in his third year, he's feeling confident, he's feeling ebullient, he's feeling, in his power, and he wants to show off his power. And so he throws a lavish banquet, and really it's more than a banquet. Usually you think of a banquet lasting one day. This man had a party for 180 days. And so you've got all of his officials, all of the people who were these, governors of provinces and so forth. They all have been brought to the capital. They're there with him, and they're just eating and drinking and having a great time. Concurrent to what the king of Persia is doing is his wife, Vashti. Vashti, the queen, has thrown a party for all the wives of these men who are running the government. And so you've got the male set of parties, you have the female set of parties, and they're having a grand time. But after the 180 days, the king decides to take it to another level. And in taking it to another level, he decides that there is going to be really a special banquet. And in the first chapter of the book of Esther, it goes to great lengths to tell us the gifts that he had for all of the attendees. They had goblets of fine gold and pearls. It talks about the pillars are white, the curtains are white, the sashes around the curtains are blue and gold, and it's just opulent, and there is wine flowing that never ceases. And during this banquet, the king decides that he wants to show off his real prize. His real prize is not a battle horse. It's not a war sword or a spear. It's not the financial coffers of Persia. He calls for his wife, Vashti. And in calling for his wife, Vashti, to come forward, that's what we hear in these first 11 verses of the first chapter of Esther. When he calls for Esther to come, he says to his eunuchs, these are the men who are watching all the women in his harem, he said, bring my wife and tell her I want her to dance for me wearing her crown. And in verse 12, it tells us Vashti, the queen, refused to come. It's as simple as that. She refused to come. Now, some modern day biblical scholars have surmised that it's not just that Vashti was asked to come and dance with her crown on, but that she was asked to dance naked. Dance naked wearing only her crown. And Vashti refused to do it. And, here's a woman who's extended herself for her husband. She has provided a female component to all the activities that the males are doing. She's being a supportive wife. But in doing all that, the husband is really degrading her. He wants to show off her body. And it has nothing to do with her mind, nothing to do with the fact that she has been a compliment to him in his leadership role as the king. He just wants to show off his naked wife. And she does not give him the pleasure of showing off her body to a group of men, many of whom she probably didn't know. And even if she knew them, it would not be appropriate. And so this creates a ruckus in the kingdom. And the ruckus in the kingdom is that some of the advisors to the king come to him and they say, King, we have a real problem. And the problem that we have is that, once word gets out that your wife, the queen, has refused your command, no other man in the kingdom is going to be able to control his wife. The wives aren't going to listen to the husbands. And so the king says, well, what shall I do? And they said, you should basically get rid of your wife as queen and create a search throughout the country and find a new queen, somebody who will abide by your rule, your order, and your command. And that's what they began to do. And next week, I'm going to talk about what happens next when Esther, the new queen, is picked. But I want to talk for just a minute about what are some of the lessons from Vashti. Number one, Vashti is an example, really, of a liberated modern-day woman. And for those of you looking at this today, I know some of the people looking at this are older, some are younger. And many of the people looking at this program today are women. And I want you to know that this message is for you. And whether or not you're single, whether or not you're married, whether or not you're divorced or widowed, there is something in this for you. Because what we can learn from Vashti is that the history in the world of independent, self-established, self-esteemed women is strong. And I know that there are many of you looking at this program right now who are women who are taking care of yourself. You're handling your money, you're handling your health, you're handling your relationships. Matter of fact, there was some research that came out just recently that said that many of the older women in America today have decided that they don't need to get married. They don't need a man. They have their money in place. They have their residence in place. They don't need a man. So that's, if you are in that category, I hope you can relate to Vashti. Another point from Vashti is that sometimes in life, you just have to know when to throw down the hammer. And what I mean by that is that you have to have a bottom. You have to have a limit. And Vashti had a limit. And her limit was she wasn't going to dance naked. And in like manner, if you're a woman looking at this program today, if you're a man looking at this program today, and you've got a woman in your life, I want you to think about Vashti and ask yourself, am I treating this person as a valued individual? If you are a woman, I want you to ask yourself, what is my bottom? What is my threshold? Are there some things I'm just prepared not to do? And, even in the name of love, are there some things I'm not going to do? And we never hear again from Vashti in this text. We don't know if she's, ridden off into the sunset, with her head held high. But what we do know is that Vashti had her own sense of values. And so that's the word that I want to leave you with today. I want you to think about your values, think about your principles. I want you to think about your independence, whether or not you're young, whether or not you're old. And I want you, if you're a woman looking at this program today, to carry yourself with dignity, carry yourself with a sense of purpose, and realize that God put you here for a reason. Jesus Christ came so that you might feel good about your life as an independent woman, an independent man. And I want you to stick around for a few minutes, because in the next segment, I'm bringing a friend of mine, a young minister, Reverend David Nunn Telford. He's a Yale graduate, 33 years of age. And I'm going to ask him his opinion about Vashti and the decisions that she's made. So thanks so much for watching the program today, and we'll be right back.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and his power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out.
There are people all across this globe who now will have the opportunity to know you like I do, because, of course, you are very forthcoming in telling stories about life, stories that are relatable, and that means something. How wonderful it is, and I just look forward to seeing how this platform, this new platform, will just rise and grow and really be a vessel through which you can be a blessing to folk all over this world, and Lord knows we need it.
Thanks for sticking around and joining us. Today we're talking about Vashti, the Queen of Persia. And I have a special guest, the Reverend David Nunn Telford, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. Thank you so much for being with me. And Reverend Nunn Telford, before we get to you, I just need to make one little comment. I want to thank those of you who've been watching this program. We've made it a whole year, and now into the second year, trying to take it up a level. And I just want to say that, one, I appreciate so much those of you who've been contributing to this broadcast. I want to thank Millicent Holly, who really made the first contribution in 2023. And I also want to thank Joyce Penn, Deborah McIntosh from Mobile, Alabama, Delgenia Barber from Detroit. And Miss Barber is a repeat contributor. I need repeat contributors. Lorimer and Jackie Wyatt live in the Southfield area of Detroit. Repeat contributors to this broadcast. Charles Johnson, who I believe is from New York. Vernell Davenport from New York. Lois Perry. Alan Hughes from Detroit. Adanika Nunu, Dr. Adanika Nunu from Detroit. Joyce Penn from Detroit, but Joyce Thompson from Sacramento, California. Huel Perkins, remember him from Channel 2 in Detroit. And who else? Josephine Austin. And my good friends from Los Angeles, we have Kevin and Phyllis Toney. Kevin Toney's from Donald Byrd and the Blackbirds. Remember that song, Doing It in the Park? Rock Creek After Dark? Have you ever heard that? That's before your time. Yeah. But he was the piano player who helped to write that. And I went to high school with him. And he sends me a contribution every month with his wife. And again, for those who make a contribution, I do have a book of prayers and photographs that I will send to you at no charge. And these are prayers that I've written and photographs that I've taken. And they mean a lot to me. So think about it, because I do need support for this. And I realize that a lot of people in today's world, believe it or not, you may have heard this, Reverend, a lot of people don't belong to any church. And so one of the things that I'm doing through this program is to encourage people to say, look, if you don't have a church home, think about being a part of my church. Think about being part of this church. Yeah. And I have some friends from the Washington, D.C. and the Baltimore area who tell me that they look at my church and they're talking about where you're going to be preaching tomorrow, Plymouth United Church of Christ. They say, I look at your church as my church, even though, they live a long way away. Yeah. So church is all relative. So that being said, again, I have with me today the Reverend Dr. David Nunn Telford. And Brother David, you heard me talk about Vashti. What's your reaction? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, always a gift to be with you, Nick, and to be on this show with your lovely audience. The fact that so many folks continue to contribute and support this program let me know that the work that you're doing matters and there's a huge impact. So thank you. I speak on behalf of all of us who enjoy this program. Thank you so much for what you do. The story of Vashti is an amazing one. I agree with you, listening to your sermon, that we really have an example here of a woman who is able to stand in the face of power, stand in the face of what we might in our modern times call, misogyny and sexism, and stand up to it. And I think that it is a incredible example to all of the women out there of what it means to stand in your own power. And I think that for those of us who identify as men, right, it teaches us a lesson or two of what it means to treat women with respect as well. When I think about the story, a few thoughts came to mind. The first is what you pointed out in the sermon, which is the power of one example instilling a little bit of fear into some of the systems that are out there, right? You had all of these lawmakers who come running to the king of Persia, and they say, if you don't nip this in the bud, this is going to spread all throughout the empire, right? Imagine the queen of all people standing up to the king and the impact that that has. And for me, that is so important because there are so many examples throughout history where the establishment, the powers that be, have been afraid of one person's voice, right? You think of the ways in which the Assata Shakors of the world, the Angela Davises of the world, Dr. King, Fred Hampton, Jesus of Nazareth, right? Navalny in Russia. There are so many examples of modern day and ancient examples of people who, because of their example, one word, one voice, one defined act, the powers that be knew the impact that it could have, right, on the masses. And I don't want to blow past that because I think that's really important. Oftentimes, I think that we can think that our impact on the world can be so small, so trivial. But I think that every now and then some of us need to remember, right, that one act can really change things. The other thing that really stands out to me about this is the fact that this text was written and was passed around a Jewish community. Scholars debate about when it was, but to me, the fact that this story made it into the canon is incredible, right? The fact that a religion and a culture that is mostly male dominated at a lot of different levels has this story of a defiant, strong-willed woman, to me is nothing short of extraordinary. And I think that one of the things that it really teaches us is the impact that stories have. And I imagine that there are some young women who are reading that story, right, who are perhaps looking around the leadership of their communities or whatever the case may be, and they are seeing themselves in the story represented as strong, resilient, and persevering, even in the face of power. To me, that matters. That matters, right? I often think, and especially when we have these conversations, I think about how the texts are put together and how they make it into the canon. And the fact that this story made it in lets me know that there is something special about this moment, which I think is really important that we celebrate. And then the last piece that kind of comes to mind for me is why Vashti says, no, I'm not coming out, right? To me, I think that it is really, really important. And because I identify as a man, I can kind of speak from this position. Vashti is letting the king of Persia know that he doesn't own her body, right? He doesn't own her movements, right? And no matter how much power he may have over this empire, he doesn't get to parade her, around in front of other people. And I think that's an important lesson, right? That we are children of God and we have autonomy over our bodies. And I think that it's incredibly important that Vashti says to this powerful man, buddy, my body belongs to me, And I think that when we think about conversations that are happening even in our country today, around like the rights over women's bodies, as we think about what we are teaching our young men about what they should be doing and saying as they're out in the public spaces. I think it's an important story and lesson from the ancient text speaking to us today as well.
We only have a minute or so left, but I think those are really great reflections that you made. And about Vashti, buddy, my body belongs to me. And I might take it another direction. I know you're married, I'm married. In the marital relations between a man and a woman, buddy, my body belongs to me, but it also belongs to you. It also belongs to you, as long as you treat me with dignity and respect. But here we have a case where the wife feels violated. And we do not hear anything more about Vashti. We don't know what has happened to her. Reverend Nunn Telford, I want to thank you for being with me. We're about out of time today, but next week we're going to talk about Esther. And I'm so glad you're going to come back and share your thoughts about Esther. Okay, and for those of you who are looking at this, read Esther, the book of Esther, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next week we're going to be talking about chapter 4. But if you read chapters 1, 2, and 3, you'll put it all together. Thanks so much for watching the program today. God bless, God keep you. And remember, I need your support, but also remember, I'm praying for you. God bless.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and his power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. Thank you for watching today's program. We hope you've been blessed in a powerful way. Just knowing you took the time to watch today's broadcast is a great encouragement to Pastor Nick Hood. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you, we ask that you mail a tax-free donation to Nicholas Hood Ministries at 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
The point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.